Hello and welcome to Wasted Plotential, where we discuss the wasted potential of our favourite plotlines. You might want to sit down because this might come as a shock to you, but I did not care for Halo 5. I know, stunning that the guy who did a 45-minute critique of Halo 4 didn't like Halo 5 either. What's next? A guy who disliked The Force Awakens also didn't like The Last Jedi? Madness. But seriously, Halo 5 was such a poorly conceived idea. Supposedly, the team making the game didn't even know the Master Chief, main character of all numbered entries, was an actual character that fans were attached to, hence centering most of the experience on a new character who wasn't even that interesting anyway. Halo 5's story had a ton of issues, but I'm going to focus on 5 of them here today. Yes, this is a gimmick, shut up. The first issue is a fairly small one, the power scaling. While playable in some missions, Blue Team are antagonists to Locke's team, who are the playable team for the majority of the game. As such, it's a weird choice to have Locke be capable of going toe-to-toe with the Chief. Conventional wisdom suggests that the Chief should outmaneuver Locke when they clash to present the former as a real threat that the latter has to work to overcome when next they meet. It's like if Dante beat Virgil at the top of the tower in DMC3. Virgil will be difficult to take seriously as an antagonist for the rest of the game. Unless we're meant to feel concerned for our series long lead now that the guy hunting him can go toe to toe with him, but I doubt that was the intent. In my version, Chief dominates because he's got so many more years of experience as a Spartan 2 than this fairly new Spartan 4. They clash again in the endgame, and Locke is more on Chief's level thanks to his experiences in this adventure. Alternatively, make it that Locke can only keep up because of Spartan 4 armor abilities that Blue Team lack, but Chief is able to damage Locke's suits, bringing him down to a much lower level that Chief can easily overpower. Second, let's address the game's total refusal to explain any of its main cast. The game has 8 main characters spread across 2 teams, Blue Team and Fireteam Osiris. Blue Team consists of the Master Chief and Fred, Kelly and Linda, who were characters in the novel starting with Fall of Reach. I read the 3 Eric Nyland novels that featured them, so I know who they are. But the thing about a multimedia project is that you will have a central medium that is the driving force of the franchise. While the number of books, comics and video games far outnumber the movies, Star Wars' story is still primarily told through the movies. Likewise, Halo's main narrative is told in the games. You have to design a new main entry on the assumption that most people playing won't have delved into the side content, or that, like me, they may have gone into some of it but not all, since I was familiar with Blue Team but had no idea how they got from being stranded at the end of Ghosts of Onyx to where they are in 5. All the game bothers to give us is that Blue Team has completed more missions together than any other squad in UNSC history. That tells us nothing. If you only play the games, as far as you're aware, the only Spartans to survive Reach were the Chief and June from Noble Team. Yes, even though the survival of other Spartans has been known by the Chief since the first strike, which is set immediately after Halo 1, the game's never acknowledged that fact until now. This game needed to do more to explain the situation. As for Osiris, we have Jameson Locke, the lead character of the Nightfall digital series, Edward Buck from ODST and Reach, and Olympia Vale and Holly Tanaka, who are both new to the series. The game does very little to explain who these people are, and their motivations for pursuing the Chief are all down to them being ordered to. There's very little to get attached to or care about. So, with the game's refusal to give them anything but surface level characterization, I think replacing these characters with established ones from past games would help the player to care about the conflict between the 2 teams. Not as much work is needed to reintroduce a character than it is to introduce them for the first time after all. First off, we're keeping Buck. He's a recognisable character and Nathan Fillion can generally be relied on to make his characters charming even if they're underwritten. Interestingly, before Fillion agreed to return for the game, Gabriel Thorne from Halo 4 Spartan Ops mode was apparently planned as the 4th member of the team until scheduling conflicts with the actor prevented that. He could be a decent fit for a slot if our hypothetical version of the game had more time in development. Alternatively, Durr from ODST would be a good fit given her existing relationship with Buck and potential for conflict among the team. I'm also going to include June from Reach since he's a surviving Spartan 3 who can also have a specific role in the team as the sniper. And finally, I'm cutting Locke too. His replacement is a character I've gone on record as not liking, but she'd make so much more sense as the leader of this team that is going after the Chief, Sarah Palmer from Halo 4. She's established through 4's campaign and Spartan Ops mode and starred in a side game, Spartan Assault. Plus, she's already met the Chief before, giving her being the one to go after him more dramatic weight than some guy who has never met him before. This would also help deal with another issue. Mike Coulter played Locke in Nightfall and the Master Chief Collection, but then his playing Luke Cage made him unavailable when his character was taken centre stage in the game his prior appearances were made to set up, leading to Ike Amadi taking over as his voice actor. Jennifer Hale did reprise the role of Palmer in Halo 5, so we'd have some consistency there if she took the lead. An alternative would be to make the team consist of Spartan Ops characters under Palmer's command, or the team from ODST under Buck or Durr's command, but a variety of sources makes the group more dynamic and offers more perspectives on the Chief. June is a Spartan 3 trained by former Spartan 2 Kurt Ambrose, and he worked alongside another 2, George, as part of Noble Team. How would this affect his views on this legendary team of 2s? Buck entered New Mombasa just as Chief was leaving aboard the Inamberclad in Halo 2. What's his take on him? Would Durr or Thorn's views differ from Buck or Palmer respectively, leading to inner conflict among the team? There's good potential for character development there. One thing I would do is include a Spartan Ops-like side mode that depicts numerous past missions for the two teams to flesh them out more, or at least have the Spartan Strike side game centre on one of the two. And the arguably most important point I'd like to discuss is the ruination of Halo 4's narrative. This is the part that will shock those of you who've seen the Halo 4 video from back in the day. I didn't like Halo 4's story, so why do I care about it being ruined? Well, since making that video, I learned a bit about why that story was told. The Didact stuff was awful, and I don't care if that part is ruined by a sequel. However, the real meat of Halo 4's narrative is found in the story of Cortana and the Chief. Cortana is a smart AI which have human-like intellect and sense of self, but at the cost of only lasting around 7 years before their mental state deteriorates and they die. Cortana is 8. The mother of creative director Josh Holmes was diagnosed with dementia at the start of Halo 4's development, which became a driving force in the decision to take the story in this particular direction. The parallels between rampancy and dementia are quite apparent, and taken from such a personal place and putting it in the story you're telling is something I can respect, even if I didn't personally like the story that was told through it. Halo 5 then came along and brought Cortana back from the dead without explanation and set her up as the antagonist in the next game's AI vs Organics narrative, which may have gone somewhere in Infinite, but I haven't played it yet because the fucking co-op isn't out yet! Whether you like Cortana's death in 4 or not, bringing her back was a mistake. It would be like bringing back Aerith in a Final Fantasy VII sequel. There was artistic vision fueled by personal loss in those stories, and undoing that in the name of fanservice feels cheap and disrespectful. If I was writing Halo 5, I'd probably keep the hints that she might be alive, but instead make it a ploy used by an antagonist to manipulate the Chief into helping them. One possibility is that it's the Didact, whose disintegration was actually some sort of digitization, and with Cortana dying in the same place he did, he can call on her likeness to trick Chief into helping him advance his goal to set up Halo 6, with 5 remaining focused on this greyer tale about the two teams clashing with one another. Through this fake Cortana plot, we can introduce the theme of how harmful refusing to accept loss can be, serving as a stronger thematic follow-up to 4's narrative, which was mostly about the Chief being unable to accept the inevitability of Cortana's death right up until the end. Hell, we could probably go a step further and have it be Blue Team who are pursuing John, adding greater significance to the conflict as Chief's refusal to accept Cortana's death brings harm to not only himself, but the people who love him too. Can you tell I came up with this part at the end of the editing process and couldn't make it a bigger focus overall? And yes, the Didact, for as dull as he was, would remain the central threat along with the Prometheans, just fleshed out more to make them more interesting. I think setting up an Organics versus AI conflict here just felt like an odd direction to go in, and it's so disconnected from the previous story that, even if the central narrative is focused on the Chief and Cortana's relationship, this trilogy just ends up feeling like they had no idea what they wanted to do with it, unlike the original trilogy. All this just draws comparisons to both the horrendous lack of planning in the Star Wars sequels and the sudden Organics versus Synthetics conflict introduced at the end of Mass Effect 3. Trust me, if there's any sci-fi blunders you don't want to be compared to, it's them. Keeping the threat established in Halo 4 and fleshing it out is the better way to go. So these alterations address the ruination of the Cortana story from 4, the player's lack of reason to care about the new and book-only characters, the inability to get the guy whose face is used for the lead character back to do the voice, the bizarre idea that the protagonist can match the antagonist from the start, and makes the 343 trilogy feel more cohesive and considered than the random jumping all over the place we actually got. 343 really is the NetherRealm Studios of Halo, isn't it? If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is Halo 3 Custom Games with Jacob Jacob, Edward Burbank and Friends by Chris Raygun. The Dobby bit sends me every fucking time, holy shit. The mother of creative director Josh Holmes was diagnosed with dementia as part of Halo 4's development. As part of it?